Hello everyone, welcome to MichMusic Now. I am Michele Weir, and today we're talking about how to fix a crappy lead sheet from the internet. And more specifically, we're going to talk about how to fix crappy lead sheets across the board. They come from all sources. Yes, they come from the internet. So if you're just, you don't want to pay for the music and you're going directly to the internet, it's potluck. You're going to find out what you get. Sometimes then you'll make a chart based on that in your key, and it's going to kind of suck. Sorry, but true. Another iffy source is older fake books, and some of them are not very jazz savvy at all. Luckily, these days, the main big publishers are doing excellent work with jazz savvy fake books. So you can kind of trust those, and I'll talk more about those a little bit later. And one more source of not so good lead sheets is in the form of published books that may be from a very reputable publisher, and they may be quality in some ways, but they're not jazz savvy. Like maybe they'll have a piano accompaniment or something, and maybe you bought them online, or maybe you have a book with piano accompaniments of jazz standards. Well, just be careful. They may not be really that jazz savvy, and when you extract the chord changes only and plug them into a lead sheet, it may kind of suck, honestly. So anyway, we're going to fix all of it today. We can't fix everything because we'd have to go really deep into the theory about it all. I'm going to guess that you might not want to do that today, but we are going to touch on the most important things and things that are pretty easy to find and fix. I want to remind you that there is a PDF download available, as there often is for the MichMusic Now classes. It's on my YouTube channel, which is MichMusic Michele Weir. I want to start by telling you a couple of points about how jazz players tend to play. And so this will inform how you should write your lead sheet, okay? First of all, even numbers are omnipresent. We have 8-bar phrases, we have 4 beats per bar, we have 8 eighth notes within one measure, we've got a 32-bar form. I mean, we're talking a ton of even numbers, and there's a lot of symmetry and balance among the even numbers. With that in mind, we tend to have chords on beats 1 and 3. So if there's 2 chords per bar, it's on beats 1 and 3. If there's 1 chord per bar, it tends to be on beat 1. Symmetry, symmetry, even numbers, even numbers. Think that way. Number 2, we don't normally have a lot of clutter in a nice, clean arrangement. So you're going to write a basic template type chart. Chord symbols, good solid progressions, correct progressions, but it's not going to be super fancy. Now, if you are doing your CD or you're recording a demo or doing a special concert, okay, that's different. Then you might do an arrangement, and there may be more complexity in the lead sheet. But just for your basic gig book lead sheet, make it pretty simple. Yeah, it's very difficult when a chart is packed full of chords to make a lot of flowing good sense of it if they're really trying to play every single chord. So I have a camera set up to show you the lead sheets that I've taken from some of my old fake books. I crossed out the name. But I want to show you some real-life examples of chords that we can easily fix. Here we go. Okay, first of all, we're going to talk about chord symbol placement. You want to place your chord symbols directly over a beat. And it's, as we just spoke about, it's going to tend to be beat 1, beat 3, beat 1, beat 3, beat 4. See how that is? Beat 1, beat 3, beat 4. We've divided the measure in half. Think symmetry, 2 beats, etc. When we got down to this measure, I felt like it was a little bit fuzzy where these chord symbols fall within the measure, and that's no good. Here's another song. This is funny. This is taken from actually my father's fake book that I've had for many years. This is from like the 1940s, and you can see the chord symbols are just really floating in the middle of the measure here and there, that we definitely don't write chords like that anymore. You want to put them on beat 1, even if they last for the full measure. Okay, the second point is we want to be careful about putting the chords on, you know, an odd, unexpected beat like beat 2 or beat 4, unless there's a really good reason for it. Okay, just because the melody might be accented on that note doesn't necessarily mean that we should put the chord there. Here's an example on the song is You. We have this phrase, there's a chord on beat 1, then beat 2, 3, 4, and then a chord on beat 1, 2, and then 3. So 1 and 2 here, 1 and 3 here. It's odd. This one, I think, was just stuck on here for, I don't really know why, but so whoever did that probably should not have. I would recommend they'd go to beat 3. Again, that principle of beat 1, beat 3, beat 1, beat 3, beat 1, beat 3, you know, 80% of the time is valid. Okay, we have a case here in Here's That Rainy Day where there's a lot of clutter, especially right here in the beginning. We have these slash chords, G major 9 over F sharp, B flat 7 over F. If the player can't read that very well right away, it's over and it's gone, because music just proceeds. It doesn't wait for you. It doesn't wait for them to interpret what the chart is supposed to be, right? So you're going to want to make sure and just keep this clean. If you were writing this, I would move it over. I would be very tempted to move this chord over to beat 3 here. Then you've got a chord on beat 1, beat 3, then beat 1, beat 3, and it cleans up the clutter. Another example of where there's clutter is here in How High the Moon. For example, here we've got this toggling around between B flat, A flat, B flat, E, and then to E flat. You know, I think they did that to accommodate the melody. B flat, A flat, B flat. But in reality, it's going to go by in the blink of an eye, this melody. So even though technically this note on beat 3 clashes with a B flat 7 chord because it's the 4th note, and we should have a major third. The 4th note will clash with a major third of a B flat chord here. But it goes by so fast. If we wrote a chord on every single note that was going to have a very short momentary clash, we'd be having, you know, 12 chords per bar. It's ridiculous. We can't do that. So this should be cleaned up, and you know, there's no reason the B flat 7 should come in on this note. Chord symbols do not need to attach to melody quite as much as these fake books will sometimes write. Actually, what we could do in these two measures, it should be F minor 7 for a whole measure, then B flat 7 for a whole measure. That would be very jazz authentic. Okay, back to Here's That Rainy Day. If you take a look here, this is a case of too darn many extensions, or at least they're written in a way that is not really contemporary. We normally would write this chord these days something like this. We tend to have these the extensions vertical like this, not, you know, going in a line like that. You can see it. We run into problems because it creates some collisions or near collisions, and it just makes for clutter, and we're trying to declutter. Now, if we go back to this older version of How High the Moon, sometimes there can be a problem in a really old book like this, where the chord progression is just too darn minimal, you know? It's minimal. It needs just a little bit more, and every single one of these chords we would want, you know, on beat 1, not floating in the middle of the bar. Okay, if you are handwriting your chart, you're going to want to be double sure that your handwriting is super, super legible. Here's something that can happen. Take a look. To me, this looks like a capital M. So to me, that would indicate G major 7. This would indicate G major 7 also. But when I go here, oops, I see a different chord symbol for G major 7 or B flat major 7. and E flat major 7. So that tells me the publisher uses this style for their major 7 chords and they use this style for their minor 7 chords. I've got to be super careful about that. So when you're handwriting something, you want to be cautious to not make a medium-sized M because no one knows exactly what that means. So if you're going to use M for minor, you know, go like that. If you're going to use M for major, go like that. And you have other choices. You can certainly do that for minor, or you can do mine for minor. And here you've got a number of choices also. The common one is maj 7. So be cautious. Usually if you are using a computer program, they should fix stuff like that for you, but still you need to proofread your work, you know, and make sure it's workable. Every chart I've ever written, I've had some mistake on that I caught in proofreading. So I am a habitual proofreader. I believe in it. And when you get to like an orchestral piece or something like that, I mean, you really have to proofread a lot because there's a lot of room for error. Anyway, even on our little lead sheets, there is room for error, so heads up. Just be cautious also that there's nothing that's colliding on your chart. For example, if you've got, you know, a stave here with melody, melody, and lyric, there's not much room to put these notes for the next stave down and the chord symbols, right? So it's easy that those clash. So the remedy to that is to get 8 stave paper. That you can get on the internet for free, I'm pretty sure, or 10 stave paper. 12 stave is fine for some things, especially if there's no melody and lyrics and you're just writing a chord chart, but otherwise it can be kind of tricky to get everything in without colliding things. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about here is big. It's so prevalent and so pervasive. Really, this is kind of like your big thing you're going to want to do to clean up your charts. I've already told you about the potential for clutter and extraneous chords that are not necessary. So we're going to look now at some specific examples of redundancy. You know, the Department of Redundancy department. It's prevalent. I mean, every tune that I have here has got aspects of too darn many chords that are really not needed. And so we just want to do a clean out and just get to the essence of what's really needed. So let's take a look at Here's That Rainy Day. Here is a B flat chord. Doesn't really say what type of B flat chord it is, and we know it's a triad, a major triad at least, but we don't know if it's a 6th chord or a 7th chord. But here we dictate it is dictated that there is a 6th chord. Here it's dictated that there's a major 7th chord. 3 B flat chords in one measure. Do we need that? No. That's like 2 B flat chords too many. There's no reason why we can't just have 1 B flat chord there. I would say that we could play this whole passage with B flat, let's go with B flat 6, and that would work really nicely. Let me play it for you all the way from here, and I'll just play 1 chord at that measure. Okay, that works just fine. So, yay, we got rid of some chords. Now, looking here, we have F9, which means dominant 7 with an added 9, and then F dominant 7. Is there any reason we need that dominant 7 there? Not any reason I can think of. It's just clutter. How about the B flat here? That's good. We like that. That's good. How about the B flat plus? Well, we understand why it's there. The melody is in that, but the melody is just a passing note. It's going to be gone in the blink of an eye. And then we go to a B flat 6 here because the 6 is in the melody. Well, okay. Again, look at this. 3 B flat major chords in a row. It's just Whoever wrote this was trying to chase melody notes and go, oh, there's a ninth there. I better write a, B flat 9 chord. Here's a flat 9. I better write a B flat with a flat 9. Here's a sus4 chord. I need to note. I need to write a B flat 11 or whatever. Just chasing every single note, and you can't do that. That's not the way songs work. So let's simplify that all to be some kind of B flat chord, and actually it goes for 2 whole measures. This F sharp 7, it's just means nothing. It doesn't need to be there at all. Someone wrote it, it looks like, to accommodate that note F sharp. So let me play a little bit. I'll just kind of play from here. I'm going to make this a C minor 7. I'm going to make this an F dominant 7, this B flat, major 7, and go to B flat 6. So we'll have a little bit of a change of their B flat chords, but not too much. Actually, I went to an E flat chord there anyway. That's going to sound a little bit better. That's the kind of thing you may not know at home how to figure out. That's where learning jazz piano comes in super, super handy, even if it's just real basic jazz piano. Here we have the same redundancy as we had up above. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's a lot of, you can start to see, right? Like if you just glance at this, you see, okay, there's a G7 plus 5. There is no plus 5 in the melody, so it's like, okay, we could have it, but we don't have to have it. And here we go, 3 G dominant 7s in a row. Stop the madness. Then a C major 7. Oh, that's relaxing by comparison. And then a random B flat 9 chord with an E in the melody. That is just, should be illegal, not right. Fake chords here, right here, fake chords. I mean, it doesn't even work. Here's a B flat 9, and here's the melody note. If you like that, then you should write your own songs and use that, because I don't like that for a jazz standard, so I'm not going to use it. Anyway, you can see here that there's a kind of random B chord. It's not functioning harmonically in anything. It's kind of like a G major 7 with B in the bass. It just makes no sense. So clean out the riffraff and you'll be good to go. And I actually want to show you one other example of clutter. I could show you a ton of it and redundancy, but I just want to show you this one. This is on the song I Will Wait For You, and at the bridge, which by the way, they're calling the interlude. This proves that it's not a really jazz savvy source. It's an older fake book. Probably from, I'm going to say 20 years ago, so maybe, maybe the publisher has changed it since then, I don't know, but we don't call it interlude, it's a bridge. This is just an AABA form, so this is the bridge. But here, we've got, we've got chord, 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 that really doesn't belong. We pretty much can have this whole thing be B flat. Not sure why they were thinking D minor there, but looking for some movement, but that is just not the way jazz players play this kind of stuff. Sometimes diminished 7 chords, though they are lovely and appropriate many times, sometimes they're sort of misplaced and they basically have a wrong root. A diminished 7 chord is a very symmetrical chord. Okay, so really, in a sense, any of these could potentially be the root because they're the same 4 notes when you go up in versions. Sometime we'll talk about this and I'll show you the piano and it'll help. Jazz bass players, the way they play is they like to travel to destinations. They very often are going through the circle of fifths for the harmony, or walking diatonically, or even chromatically. But random jumps away from one of those 3 things is not that common. We want to watch for that, and here's an example of sort of a good use of a diminished chord and then a not as good use of a diminished chord. Here's the beginning. It goes like this. it's great. It's perfect. We often have this flat 3 diminished. Okay. But when we go on further, this G diminished is a little bit less common. It's kind of old style. You know, it sounds like this. Yeah. You know, one thing that could happen there would be C major 7, and then C sharp diminished 7. And that would be nice because C, C sharp, D makes for a nice bass voice leading. And we're a lot of times looking for chord progressions that lend themselves to smooth, logical voice leading in the bass notes. And I'm going to bring you back to this one we looked at earlier also. This is the old, super old fake book, and here is a diminished chord. Again, the idea of it is not so bad, but it's, you know, it's the jumpy, random jumping in the bass notes that it really doesn't work. I'm going to start from back here. Jazz players just don't do that. They might go. We might turn this 5 chord into a 2/5 and go A minor to D7, A minor 7, D7. That makes for a voice leading that goes G, G sharp, A minor, and then to D. That would work great, but otherwise that's a bit too jumpy. Sometimes there are chords that are just plain wrong or misleading, especially in the older books, which you're going to find online, probably a pretty good amount of the time. So, for example, we might see C flat 9. So, is that a C flat chord, or is it a C chord with a flat 9? I'm going to guess it's C, 7, flat 9. Now it's clear. Now we know what it is. So watch for things like that. And if there is a melody note that's a half note or a whole note, or maybe it's just the highlight of a phrase and there's maybe going to be a pause there or something, you've got to make sure that one doesn't clash with the chord that is written. So every once in a while you see something like, let's say it's a G7 chord and you've got a C natural in the melody. And it's a half note and it's a ballad, so you're going to sit on that half note for a moment or two. Yeah, well then I would, you know, call it a sus chord because we're going to change this chord to be a suspension to accommodate this note. Usually these crappy lead sheets do the opposite. They go overboard on trying to make these adjustments and they write too many chords. But in this particular case, this could be an omission that they left off that you're going to want to check for. If you play the chord and sing the melody and it doesn't sound right, you better investigate. So I hope this has been interesting and helpful for you. I gotta say, it's a little bit heady and a little bit, you know, theory intensive, I think, what we were doing today. So you probably should watch this video again, maybe a couple of times again, because I think you'll soak in more as you do that. Get the PDF download and follow along and maybe make notes if you need to, you know, have reminders or whatever, but it's going to be tough to totally soak it in at just one listening. I want to recommend some materials to you also. These are some of the fake books that I think are great. I mean, really, it's not the specific fake book I want to show, it's the company, because they make a lot of different fake books. This is Shear Music Company. It's Chuck Shear is the name of the guy that owns this company. First of all, they've got digital fake books, which is really great, and they also have downloads. like individual song downloads, so you could pick a song that you want and have it in your key. So you can pick any key that you want. It's pretty convenient. Here's a song, and it's just super neat and clear. I promise you, anything with the Chuck Shear Company has got good jazz savvy chord changes. Here's one from one of my publishers, Alfred Publishing, and it's just beautiful, right? Clear as a bell. The chord symbols are big, very readable, and the chords are good. I like this book a lot. And I only had one kind of more current fake book from Hal Leonard, another publisher of mine. And this is an instrumental book, so it might not be what you particularly need, but you can know that they do make good jazz fake books. Again, very legible, very jazz savvy chords, and so I recommend all of that. I also want to share with you an arrangement of mine so you can get a sense of what it can look like when you arrange something. I didn't add the lyrics on this one, but it's a rather reharmonized and sort of re-envisioned version of I've Grown Accustomed to Her Face. And I just wanted to show you how clear I believe it is, how easy to read it is. Like, nobody's going to read it and have any kind of problem because it's just clear. You know, the intro, and there's a double bar there. You just read changes. There's a couple little kicks, but none of the chords are colliding or anything like that. There's this, and there's the DS, and it's really easy to see where the coda is when it's time to get there. So that's what you're shooting for. And I'll tell you honestly, some of our students at school where I teach at UCLA, you know, they're in my class and they come in as freshmen, and it only takes a couple of weeks and then they're writing pretty darn nice one-page simple lead sheets. And then by the middle of the year, they're writing intros or writing endings. We start to write kicks and things like that. This is all in addition to singing and improvising, scatting and stuff like that. And then by the end of the year, sometimes some of them are basically professional copyists. You know, so it's not that difficult to learn to do this. You may know this book. This is my book, Jazz Singer's Handbook. I don't care if you buy my materials. You don't have to do that at all. But it's of value for you here. So I just want to show you this in case you are really pretty serious about lead sheet writing. This is the first chapter, and this gives the basics. So it explains everything. If there's terms I'm using that you don't know, it's in here somewhere. There's a layout for an AABA kind of tune. There's a layout for an ABAC kind of tune, and it explains what that means. There's a how-to about transposing. Then there's arranging, where you add your intro, you add your ending, and then there's some information about writing kicks and modulations and all that. So if you want some lead sheet writing tutelage, that might be a place. Okay, I am wishing you the best. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.